Hey, what's going on, guys? Earlier today, we received some massive breaking news. We found out who is going to step in to replace Khalil Rountree against Jamahal Hill at UFC 303. We are now getting Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg as the co-main event of the Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler fight card, which, thank God, this came together, because UFC 303 absolutely needed this fight. The fight card on paper is garbage right now, especially with Colby Covington ducking Ian Machado Gary. We needed a big fight on this card, and Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg is a phenomenal fight. We're going to discuss that fight in detail. I'm going to give you an early prediction for that fight as well. But I think there's multiple layers to this story that I don't believe a lot of people will cover. They'll just look at, oh, Jamahal Hill, Carlos Ulberg, and they won't cover the rest of it. Because I believe this entire situation with Khalil Rountree, who supposedly accidentally ingested a banned substance and then self-reported to the new UFC in-house UFC drug testing program, I think this situation is very, very fishy. It is very, very fishy. And also, this story highlights the shortcomings of the new UFC drug testing program, which is headed up by George Piro, who has no background in any drug testing program, but he was on 60 Minutes not once, but he was on 60 Minutes twice. So the UFC decided to hire him based on that and not any actual experience in this realm, which I really want to discuss in this video because I think a lot of people are confused with what's actually going on now that USADA's gone. But let's start off with Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg. I love this fight. I absolutely love these types of fights. Every time a fight like this gets announced, I see people saying, Joey, you're such a hypocrite. You're always crying for meritocracy and blah, 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 so on and so forth. I get a lot of those people. I absolutely love these types of fights. You go back in time. I know I didn't have a channel then. I loved Leon Edwards versus Khamzat Chimaev. This was when Khamzat was unranked. Leon was ranked in like the top 5. I loved when you got Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley. I love, and this isn't as bad as those cases, I loved Umar Nurmagomedov versus Corey Sandhagen, which we recently broke down. I love when you have these hyped up contenders who look very promising but haven't fought the best level of opposition. I love when they're thrown to the wolves. You know, we get to sink or swim, and we get to find out right away, can they hang with some of the top fighters in their division? And that's exactly what Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg is. I actually would venture to say I am more excited for Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg than I was for Jamahal Hill versus Khalil Rountree. Don't get me wrong, I like Jamahal Hill versus Khalil Rountree. But I think I like the Ulberg fight better just because of the unknown. There's something about the unknown that gets me excited. And I don't know if a lot of people agree with me, a lot of people disagree with me. I really haven't seen fan sentiment on this particular fight. But I love that this matchup is happening, and boy, did UFC 303 need it. Off the top of my head, I don't even remember a fight on the main card. I'm not even going to bother looking it up. It's a terrible card. It needed Jamahal Hill versus Khalil Rountree. Once Khalil Rountree fell out, I was scared they were going to put Anthony Smith in there, which was going to be a sacrificial lamb in my opinion. I think this was one of the best options. You know, I don't know what every fighter in the division, I didn't know which of them were available, particularly to go in a month's notice and fight Jamahal Hill, a former UFC champion. But I think this is one of the best options. The only fight that I would have preferred other than Carlos Ulberg, I mean, there's plenty of fights that would have been interesting. The Yuri fight would have been interesting. But the fight that I can really pinpoint and say, you know what, I would have really preferred this. I would have loved to see Jamahal Hill versus Brother too. But I would actually prefer to see that closer towards the holidays, you know? So it is what it is. We're getting Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg. Man, this is a massive test for Carlos Ulberg. You look at Carlos Ulberg, he's coming off a brutal KO win against Alonzo Menefield. Before that, Da Ung Jung. Before that, Ihor Potieria. Before that, Nikolai Negamoriano. Okay? Before that, Tefan Nchukwi. You know, I mean, they're okay. They're not great fighters. They're not horrible fighters. They're not straight up scrubs. But he's looked very promising, particularly in the Alonzo Menefield fight, which he got a 12-second KO, took no damage. That was back on May 11th, so not that long ago, 2 weeks ago. You know, him taking on Jamahal Hill is a big test, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Carlos Ulberg can pull this off. He has very good striking. He's not going to need grappling. He has okay grappling. He showed it in the past. And Jamahal Hill's not going to grapple. If Jamahal Hill's not going to grapple against Alex Pereira, he isn't grappling against Carlos Ulberg. And he has a stubborn, salty Jamahal Hill who just got KO'd not that long ago, a month ago. April 13th to June 29th. I forgot the exact number of days, but that is a quick turnaround for Jamahal Hill. So if I'm Carlos Ulberg, if I'm Carlos Ulberg's management, I'm his team, I'm his agent, I'm his friends, I'm licking my lips at this matchup because you have Jamahal Hill, who's a former champion, who's ranked, I don't even know what he's ranked right now, but ranked super high in the division, and he's coming off a brutal KO loss where he can't accept reality afterwards. And now I'm coming off one of the biggest wins of my career, and I'm talking about Carlos Ulberg, and I didn't take any damage. I'm not injured, and now I get this opportunity to step up and potentially propel myself to a title shot. He beats Jamahal Hill, and let's say he does it in impressive fashion. He's right in the title picture. Right in the title picture. And light heavyweight isn't that deep. You know, you have Pereira at the top. You have Ankalaev there. You have, Yuri, who's resurgence. But outside of that, there's a lot of guys like currently on losing streaks, You have Jan, you have Rockage. There's not a lot of, it's not like some of these lower weight classes. So if Ulberg gets a win here against Jamahal Hill, it is massive for him. And honestly, I like Carlos Ulberg's chances in this fight. But for me, I would say 75% of the time, I usually go with experience. So I'm probably going to go Jamahal Hill in this. That's going to be my early prediction. But if you really pick apart Jamahal Hill's resume, and I know people are going to say, you're biased against Jamahal Hill, blah, 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 cry me a river. You look at his resume, it's not good. It's not great, okay? It's not horrible. I'm not saying it's horrible, but he beat up the dead body Glover Teixeira. Fair enough. He won the title on short notice. He beat Thiago Santos before he headed to PFL and looked like an absolute scrub. He beat Johnny Walker, who was absolutely no chin. Lost to Paul Craig. Oven St. Preux. Then we're getting to names you guys aren't even going to recognize. So, I don't know, man. It's crazy. Jamahal Hill, I picked him against Pereira. But I'm just saying, he doesn't have the best resume either. And Ulberg has really good striking. And I think Jamahal Hill has put himself in a bad situation here on a quick turnaround because he's stubborn. He really wants to get that loss back after he got brutally chinned by Pereira and then blamed Herb Dean for the entire thing. I think he desperately wants to get a win back. That's why he wanted to get back in the cage so quickly. I think it's detrimental. Look what happened to Alexander Volkanovski. His ego got the best of him. Let me step in against Islam Makhachev on short notice. Gets brutally chinned. Oh, let me have a quick turnaround right after that against one of the most dangerous contenders I've ever faced in Topuria. Oh, brutally chinned. Now he's on the verge of his career being over. I know that's kind of an exaggeration, but Jamahal Hill's not doing himself any favors here. His management is not doing him any favors here. He could get a big win, be right back on track, right back in the title picture, fair enough. But I just think he set himself up with less than optimal circumstances. But I'm going to pick Jamahal Hill in this one right now. I might change my mind. But early pick, I'm going Jamahal Hill. I just think I've just seen more out of him against quality opponents. I think, Carlos Ulberg's getting tagged on the chin by Daang Jung. He eats shots. He's not just untouchable in the feet at all. I still think he has a lot of improvement to do. And I think if Jamahal Hill can find that chin, I think Jamahal Hill can pull Ulberg out. And I think maybe Jamahal Hill knows he has his back against the wall and he fights super smart in this fight. He requests that Herb Dean isn't the referee so he doesn't get KO'd because of a nut shot that he threw. And I think I'm going to go Jamahal Hill with my early prediction. I just think he gets it done here. I think he can find the chin of Carlos Ulberg. And also Carlos Ulberg, even though he, just coming off a training camp, it's still not good to take a fight on a month's notice against a guy like Jamahal Hill, who's a former UFC champion. So ultimately, for my early prediction, I'm going Jamahal Hill. Now, I want to look at the Khalil Rountree situation and the drug testing kind of background of this entire story. So if you look at this MMA fighting article, and I'll link this article down in the description, but this is about the suspension. Khalil Rountree only has to sit out for 2 months after self-reporting a violation of UFC's anti-doping policy, but that's still enough time to prevent him from competing at UFC 303. On Wednesday, UFC issued a statement via Combat Sports Anti-Doping, CSAD. I'm happy that MMA Fighting actually put this in parentheses, the promotion's in-house anti-doping program, because the UFC, and I have to make a video on this because I don't think a lot of fans understand this, the UFC acts as if they have an independent drug testing agency. And the way they lay it out, it seems like that. And I know someone's probably going to tell me down in the comments that I'm wrong. This drug testing program is in-house in terms of dishing out the punishments, in terms of frequency of tests, It is in-house. Okay, let's read a little bit more. Announcing that Rountree has accepted a 2-month sanction retroactive to May 4th after revealing that he took a supplement that contained a banned substance. So it's a retroactive suspension. So May 4th, July 4th, he will be out of suspension. So just missing UFC 303 by a couple days. Now, I think had there been something else here and they found a way to keep Khalil Rountree on the card, I think it would have just looked even worse than this already looks, in my opinion, because I feel like there's a lot of misdirection here, and we're going to go through it all in this video because I want you guys to understand as well. Let's look at Khalil Rountree statement on Instagram. This was the first we found out about the bad news from Khalil Rountree, and he posted, "I'm gutted to deliver the news to you all. I will not be fighting at UFC 303 due to consuming a banned substance. I did not do this intentionally, and I'm doing everything I can to get this situation taken care of. I was using a personalized, tailored supplement service from a company that I trusted who understand my limitations and what I can take and cannot take. They accidentally sent me a blended supplement to me that contained banned substance called DHEA, parentheses, which is prohibited at all times under the UFC anti-doping policy, end of parentheses. Only after I consumed it was the ingredients brought to my attention." It continues, "I immediately contacted Senior Vice President of Anti-Doping Compliance, Jeff Nowitzki, and UFC Vice President of Anti-Doping Compliance, Donna Marcolin. Upon receiving that information to inform them of the matter, I provided them with all the information to show that this was not a matter of cheating or to enhance my performance. Although DHEA is a non-performance enhancing, it is a banned substance, therefore I am under a temporary suspension. My sincerest apologies to all you and to Jamal for this unfortunate series of events. This is a huge loss and an even bigger lesson." So a couple things I want to take away from that. And we're going to look at the UFC statement themselves. He says, although DHEA is a non-performance enhancing, I think he meant to say, although it's a non-performance enhancing drug, it is a banned substance. I'm not an expert on PEDs. I don't know, but what I do know is what I can easily research online. I went to WADA's website, which is, the people who do the drug testing for the Olympics. This is from WADA, one of WADA's information pages. It's generally accepted in the sports world that, and this is the name for it, DHEA, that's the long name for it, enhances physical performance, and DHEA therefore figures on the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, list of prohibited substances in sports both in and out of competition. DHEA is a weak androgen that needs conversion to more potent testosterone, and that assumption is that athletes expect a significant increase in circulating testosterones through exogenous, I don't even know how to pronounce that, DHA administration. Either way, WADA says that it helps enhance physical performance. So you already have Khalil Rountree misrepresenting it a little bit, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but again, this is from WADA, who is a reputable source on this, saying it increases physical performance, okay, in multiple different ways. So you already have Khalil misrepresenting it, and we're going to get to more of this in a second because I think this is a little bit more fishy, and I'm starting to almost think Khalil Rountree was intentionally abusing the system and got caught, okay? We're going to get to that more in a second. Let's look at the statement from the UFC now. This is the UFC statement that they put on their website from the CSAD. Again, this is just a shell company that is the UFC's actual in-house drug testing agency that they act like is independent. But it says, Combat Sports Anti-Doping announced today that Khalil Rountree of Las Vegas, Nevada has accepted a 2-month sanction for a violation of UFC anti-doping policy. Rountree self-reported, again, this is parroting what Rountree said, self-reported to UFC personnel the mistake use of dietary supplement that contained a DHEA, a prohibited, a prohibited at all times anabolic steroid. Okay, again, that's an anabolic steroid. How is that not performance enhancing, as Khalil Rountree said? I thought it was a typo for a second. As one of its several ingredients. Shortly after beginning use of the supplement, a biological sample was collected by Drug Free Sport International, DFSI, from Rountree on May 4th, 2024. I want you to remember that. Shortly after he ingested it, a sample was taken from Khalil Rountree and was shipped to and tested by the Sports Medicine Testing Laboratory in Salt Lake City, Utah. SMRTL's isotope ratio mass spectrometry testing reflected that the sample was consistent with, and I don't know how to pronounce that, origin of 5A, not pronouncing all this, but you get the point, metabolites DHEA. So we tested positive for these banned supplements. Rountree provided CSAD with shipping records detailing that he received supplements containing DHEA on May 2nd, 2024, just 2 days before he provided the May 4th sample. Rountree also provided documentation from the owner of the clinic that sent him the supplement, reflecting the company's brand marketing director sent Rountree some of the company's quote-unquote therapeutic blend supplements without prior approval. The owner described the mistake as a massive oversight on our part, period. The evidence reflects that as soon as Rountree realized the mistake, he immediately notified UFC personnel, who immediately passed the information along to CSAD. So, look, what I want to know here is they're acting like Rountree found out that he took the substance and immediately reported to the UFC. That's what it's making it sound like. But if it was shipped on the 2nd and he was tested on the 4th, what that tells me is, no, he took that supplement, then he got tested, he was going to get busted, so before he got actually busted and the results came back positive, he got out in front of it. It would be like if you inject, let's say, a banned substance that only is going to be in your system for 24 hours. I'm sure there's something along those lines. I'm just giving you a hypothetical scenario. Then that very day, you know, I want to say USADA, but the drug testing company knocks on your door. All of a sudden, you can say, oh, well, I took this and I realized it almost comes off as he only reported this because he got tested. That's what it's reading to. That's what I'm understanding here. It got shipped out on May 2nd and he got a sample collected on May 4th. So I'm wondering when was it May 3rd that he took the supplement and then he reported it on May 3rd after he took it? Or was it he only reported it once they came to test him? That is what I want to know, truly. That is what I want to know. And, you know, there's more. They go on a little bit more. I'll link the article down in the description if you want to check it out. But I just think this is very fishy. And the fact that you have the owner describe this as a mistake and a massive oversight, I think this is a massive problem in MMA that nobody ever talks about. And that's why I want to talk about it in this video, because I think there's a huge loophole here. And while I'm sympathetic to the tainted supplement argument, what I think goes on a lot, right? I believe there's a lot more cheating, you know, than people, you know, I want to quote Nate Diaz. I think everyone's on steroids, okay? And I don't actually think everyone's on steroids, but I think a lot more people get away with it than people realize. And I think what could truly be going on here, and I don't even think this is speculation, I think this is fact. This definitely goes on in certain situations, maybe not in this situation, but I think there are companies that intentionally put PEDs in their supplements, and then people know that those supplements have those PEDs in them, and they take them anyway, but it's not listed. So then if they get busted, they don't look like they were cheating, and they can just say, oh, tainted supplement, tainted supplement, tainted supplement. But they knew there was performance enhancers in those supplements. And why is the owner of this company sending out Khalil Rountree these banned supplements, and then Khalil Rountree's not even double checking before he takes this stuff? He's never even heard of this. This is just some random therapeutic blend. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to take it. I don't care. I'm not even going to read the ingredients or anything. I think it's one of those things. And again, supposedly this one actually has the ingredients on it, or at least that's the kind of way they make it seem. But then it's like Khalil Rountree self-reported. And this reminds me of a story. And what really made me even decide to cover this so in depth is, I'll never forget when TJ Dillashaw tested positive for EPO, and people applauded him for coming out and saying, look, I cheated, blah, blah, blah. He admitted it, right? And everyone was like, oh, applaud to TJ Dillashaw. You know, there's people still shitting on him, rightfully so, but there were people applauding him. And what I said was, well, what he took was injectable only. So there's no way out of it. He doesn't have a way to lie about it. So of course he has to just own up to it. There's no other avenue for him. I think this could be one of those situations, and I'm not saying I'm going to die on this hill. I'm not saying I'm ready. There could be more details that we don't know about. But it seems like Khalil Rountree took this supplement thinking he was going to get away with it. All of a sudden, a random drug test showed up, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, well, I accidentally took this. It was a mistake. I accidentally took this, and reported himself. And now you have this drug testing program where USADA used to be very strict, and I understand, you know, there should be some leniency in certain cases with certain, you know, factors, you know, when you look at mitigating factors and whatnot. But you have this new drug testing program that's now like, oh, you're only going to be out 2 months. Basically, it's not even a real layoff. You're only going to be out 2 months. You took a banned substance. So now is everyone going to now look at this as a case study for, oh, this is a loophole? What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the best performance enhancer that's in a supplement that's not listed, and I'll take it, and hopefully I don't get caught by the randomized drug testing. But if I do, I'll just claim that it was a tainted supplement, and then I only get a 2-month suspension. I'm telling you, you can't convince me that this new drug testing program doesn't allow for more PED usage. You can't tell me tomorrow, and I want you guys to actually let me know down in the comments on this one. If Conor McGregor tested positive today, do you guys honestly believe George Piro in the UFC isn't going to bury that? Do you think, here's the question I want you to answer down in the comments. Do you think if Conor McGregor tested positive, would the UFC try to cover it up and keep UFC 303 intact? Let me know down in the comments. I'm genuinely curious because I don't believe this at all. I think the new drug testing program was built to be more lenient, to allow people to abuse the system more, while the UFC could maintain the optics of a quote-unquote clean sport, which I don't think ever existed, but they want to maintain those optics while not actually enforcing it. And now we have a guy who took a banned substance. He's in control of what goes in his body, and now he's getting a 2-month suspension. It just seems awfully fishy to me. And then you have the owner coming out and saying, it was all our fault, it was all our fault, it was all our fault. Yeah, of course he's going to want to take the blame because he wants to cover up for this athlete who potentially was taking this purposely because he knew of its performance-enhancing properties. And then the fact that they're saying he self-reported, it reminds me of the whole entire Dillashaw situation where, oh yeah, applaud Dillashaw for coming out and admitting that he used it. You know, if there was no test on May 4th, we wouldn't even be talking about this, because if he took the supplement and then he realized, let's say he looked at the ingredient list and he realized that it had this banned substance in it, and he called up the UFC and said, look, I took this. I want to get out ahead of this before a randomized drug test shows up. But if he reported it afterwards, that's what I want to know. I want to know the order of operations. But the way I'm looking at it now, May 2nd shipping, May 4th drug test, it sounds like he only reported it once the drug test came. I would love to know the timeline, but I just think the situation has far more layers than anyone else is going to talk about it. So I wanted to cover it in this video. But ultimately, I'm kind of gutted that we're not getting Jamahal Hill, Khalil Rountree, because I do like that fight and I like that opportunity for Khalil Rountree. But I love that we're just throwing Carlos Ulberg to the wolves against Jamahal Hill, and I can't wait to see if he can sink or swim against Jamahal Hill. And if Jamahal Hill loses, oh my God, what excuses is he going to make after that? Imagine if Ulberg flatlines him. Ulberg's going to flatline him and say, you're only safe because I allow you to be safe. Imagine that. And then Jamahal Hill got flatlined by a guy who's outside the top 10, I believe. I don't even know where right now Ulberg's ranked in the top 15 rankings. But overall, love the fight. Looking forward to it. UFC 303 absolutely needed it. Let me know what you guys think of all this down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to share the video. Subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.